Thank you, Sandile. Thank you, University of Johannesburg, Dr. Tinyiko, and all your colleagues, and everybody who came here today, all protocols observed. I don't know, you hear them always say that, so I don't really know the real meaning, but it seems to work every time. So except when I say it, people laugh. And I see so many people, few brothers that I grew up with here, who have come to check me out if I'm still as consistent as during our childhood. I see my cousin Peter Vundla, my friend Julius Mdluli, Dr. Gigi Mbeche, Mostau, Louis Mulamu, and they're all here really so that when we get together later on in the week, they're going to just make fun of me. Louis. I would just like to start by saying that the one thing I'd like to correct tonight is that wherever I go, people connect me with Sophia Town. But I'm really from Alexandra Township. I was born in Witbank, Emalahleni. Barbara and I were born in Witbank, Emalahleni, and our little sister Elaine. But we were raised in Alexandra Township after we were old enough to come and work at our parents' home. But we were raised by my grandmother. My grandmother, that's a nice sound. What does it mean? My grandmother, Mtise Mrungwa, Danzunza Mandrungwa, Agamandebelum Kanukanu Gamakoporia, raised us in a very, very strict traditional way. When I say strict, I mean that she was really loving, but she was also very tough. But she taught us respect the hard way, and we never lost it. But when we came to live with our parents in Alexandra Township, we came to a mecca of Africa, because Alexandra Township was the home of migrant laborers from all around South Africa and the neighboring countries. So we grew up in a township where by the time we were 5, 6, 7 years old, we were already multilingual. You know, English became a 4th, 5th, or 6th language much, much later in our lives. And we also grew up in a township that was there to beat the system. The one thing about Alexandra Township, you know, Sophia Town, and most of the freehold townships of South Africa, the main thing that we learned as children is that we were beating the system, and we were always ahead of the police, either in fence jumping, dog kicking, and just being like elusive and evasive. And Alexandra was a township was a place where if you were a gangster and the police were looking for you, you were a fugitive, you could hide there for life. They'd never find you. It was the capital of like beating the system. It was also the place where Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and a whole lot of people who became revered later on, they studied and started their lives when they came from the Bundus, when they were really mohos still. They came to Alexandra Township and was still at Levasramak. That's where they became woke. It was also a place where on Friday night, starting on Friday night, just as soon as the sun went down, the first thing you would hear were the drums and the reed pipes and the iron pipes of the Batlokwas, the Bapedis, and the Bavendas. Most of the time you never saw them, but you heard them. And that was the depth of our culture then. And then our weekends we could go to any place, anywhere where there was open spaces, either to see this ethnic group or that group or that group. So we had very rich heritage lives. It was a time when like every township had a community hall, hall ya masipala. And are you trying to tell me to get off stage or something? Okay. And is there no off switch? Okay, I'm going to continue nevertheless. And notwithstanding is the right word, right? Right, Barbara? Notwithstanding? And we grew up in a township that was run by Africans, for Africans. And it was a township of resistance. We learned there not to be afraid. You know, we went to the rallies at number 3 Square every Saturday, Sunday afternoon. And in one afternoon, we could listen to speeches by Aida Mtwana, Robert Gesha, Nelson Mandela, Lillian Ngoyi, Molema Selope Thema, Walter Sisulu. It was just an endless array of people who later on became very, very famous people, but we just knew them as people who were speaking for us, and that they were there to teach us how to beat the system. And also they taught us that the system was wrong. So we grew up knowing that. And then, like my sister described, we were raised in a home, and not only where my father was a great sculptor, an artist, and a carpenter, and a gardener, and all that, but he was also a person of the people. And our mother was the same. And we spent very little time sleeping in our own beds because they always brought stray children, destitute children, to pass through our houses until they could place them somewhere in a foster home. And one day I asked my mother, how come you're always bringing these children here and I have to sleep on the couch in the living room or on the floor? And she said, you will always have this home, and you will always have these clothes that we give to these children. But when they leave here, they don't know where they are going. So always know how fortunate we are, how fortunate you are. And we were raised that way, and there was no other way to be but to be a person of the people. Another thing is that I come from a country that is an amazing resilience. Many people don't know today that by 1994, our people had fought domination for 350 years or more. That is a very, very long time to be at war. So we grew up in a country that was really at war. And we were taught about the Nceka and Hinsa and Makana and Mushweshwe and Skukuni and Tetwayo and Shaka. And, I mean, we knew all those people, we knew who they were. And those are some of the things that carried us all the time. We always knew who we were. And as a result, when a white Afrikaner young cop came to you, we came to us, we didn't feel intimidated, but we didn't have the kind of respect that they wanted us to have for them. We despised them, actually. But most of all, we knew how to talk our way out of a tight spot in their own language without even them knowing that we're speaking their own language. They always used to say, "Wat sê jy?" Ek sê, "Maar ek praat Afrikaans, my baas." We grew up in a township that, and in townships that had like people who really were not afraid of the system, like the spoilers or the cooperatives or the Americans or the Berlins. And they would bring things to town that we only could window shop. I mean, to the township that we could only window shop, you know. But actually, if you were connected enough with them and you had the money, you could order your furniture straight from them. You could order your clothes straight from them, you see. And people say, I'm going to town. What are you going to do? I'm going to window shop. For what? For furniture. But you don't have the money for this kind of furniture. Come to my house next week, you'll find it there. But the thing that really made us is that we come from a very, very resilient people. We came from a people that were not afraid. Of course, we had sellouts. They were all known to all of us. But they lived with us, you know. They lived with us. They were part of the system. But the one thing that a lot of people always like ask overseas, and the media especially, how was it living under apartheid? And I always say to them, you should ask the people of apartheid how it was living under us. Because they didn't sleep at night, but we slept. Yeah. You know, they had to figure out all the time. So I'm just trying to say from what my sister said that you can't be afraid. We were not afraid, and we grew up in a situation we were not afraid. And we also grew up in an age where we were outraged. Anytime any one of us was violated, we were outraged. You know, it was a time of marches and strikes and challenges. And one of the heartbreaking things is that today, a 5-month-old lady can be, a 5-month-old baby can be raped, a little child can be murdered, women being taken advantage of and raped left, right, and center. And we have lost our sense of outrage. We just shake our heads and say, hi, But that couldn't have happened before 1994. We would have had that outrage. I think that we need to get that outrage back in our society. You can tell how hard I had to work to be clever in my home, because my sister, who is 3 years younger than me, was always so much cleverer. And we had aunts and uncles who were school teachers, and they always gave us tests when they came to visit. And by the time I would raise my hand, Barbara would have answered the question long ago. And it's still like that today, as you can see. And it's not really about weaves. You know, in my life, it's not really about not liking weaves. I just grew up at a time when people looked like themselves. And they looked more like themselves than they looked like other people. And of course, there are weaves today that still look like us. But some people have such big ones that when they approach, I think I have a psychological kind of allergy to it, because as they approach me, I'm going. Because, you know, it gets into your mouth if you don't move it. But one of the saddest things that has ever happened to me, I was in India in 2004, and I met a friend who was at New York University at the same time that I was at school, and he had become a big traditional filmmaker, and he said to me, I'm very worried about Africa. And I said, why? He said, well, let me tell you about us Indians. First of all, we only have one song. We sing it fast, we sing it slow, we sing it happy, we sing it sad. And we only have one dance. And we do it classical, and we do it urban. And if you look at the Bollywood movies, you can see that our dance is in there. And so we only have two costumes, the sari and the pajamas. He says, but you can see in high fashion how far we have brought the pajamas. So when you look at what we only have one song, one dance, and 2 costumes. That's 4 things. But with that, we have been able to keep Indians to be proud of being Indians, and we've impacted the whole world with it. They said, now you Africans, you got so much variety. And so much diversity. But they are busy looking west. So don't be surprised when the people come to your countries and they come and look for the animals and the geographical sites because they can't find you. It's a very great pity because of the content that you have and all this variety, and we don't get to see even a glimpse of it because you are busy following other people's cultures. The day Africa looks inside and looks east, I think that Africa will come back sooner than it claims that it can come back. So whenever you are ready and you feel like we can come and help you, please call on me. I will be there because I want to see the real Africa, not the one that I've seen. But my sister wonders that it's not about going back, and being like that, but it's about finding out who we are. One of the things that scares me most is that the old generation, the aged of today, and by the way, when you walk around South Africa, you think that there's no aged people because where they were really like the forefront of our growth before, now you don't see them and they are hidden in our backyards. And we think that maybe they don't know what's happening, but they still have so much information that we should glean from them. And I think it is incumbent upon us at this point to figure out how we can record each and every one of those people to tell us whatever they can recall, because if we don't, we won't have any information from the past, and we're the only people like that. I mean, when you look at the English people, when William and Kate or Elizabeth and Philip were getting married, they go 1,000 years back, and they show us who they are, with the yeomen and the horses and the guards and all that stuff that they do. And they have special days for their thing, but they're modern people. The Japanese, English stops at the gate. When they get into the house, they do their bowing and they wear their kimonos. Other people make time for themselves, and they have very little, but when you look at how much we have, it's amazing how much we ignore it and put it aside. But on the other side, we can't be blamed for that because, the misinterpretation of urbanization, the misinterpretation of education, and the misinterpretation of religion, we were taken advantage of with that, and to the point where we really believe that our own heritage is backward, barbaric, savage, heathen, pagan, primitive, and all those things. And as a result, we are afraid to show it. In conclusion, I've been driven, like my sister has said, I've always been obsessed. At first, my biggest dream was to open an African restaurant in New York next to the UN because I thought I'd make so much money because there were so many Africans at the UN. But later, as it grew upon me, I realized even in other parts of Africa where I've lived, and I've lived in many parts in Africa, was the abandoning of that wealth of our heritage that we have. And we don't want to force people to get into it. People always say, but you, why we're trying to go forward and you're always pulling us back. And I said, but you're going where when you're going forward? Where are you going, Because if you don't know where you come from, you ain't, like they say in the States, if you don't know where you come from, you ain't going nowhere. Maybe you're going sideways. So, been working for a long time, and now with a lot of groups and a few friends, and we'll come up with like this heritage trust. And the aim of it is to have places where we can go and see ourselves. Instead of seeing tribal dances, we should have our own productions now, of integrated productions that are just as spectacular or more spectacular than any circus. We see Cirque du Soleil, and it's all over the world, and it's just acrobats and doing contortions. But when you look at the content Africans have, it's limitless and fathomless, but we're not even touching it. But we need places where we can go and see these things. And also, by the way, it's exportable. It's more exportable even than us urban artists. But it'll be a place maybe that'll interest our people, our children. And of course, I'm very jealous of the animals and the geographical sites. And obviously, the tourists will have that as their destination at night after they've seen the animals. They can come and see us. But attached to that should be satellites where we can relearn our languages, our design, our architecture, our history, our languages. You know, I look at my grandchildren, every time I speak to them in our language, they look at me and they have to translate from English into Setswana, you know, before they can, and they struggle. And it breaks my heart because we grew up just chewing up all these languages, you know, in the townships. And like, when you grew up in Alex or Sofia Town or West End or Soweto here, and when you were a teenager, you could speak 5, 6 languages, many of us did, you know, before we even spoke English, you know. So those languages are there, the people are there. 80% of Africans are really rural ethnic people who are to a great extent misplaced in the townships, I mean, in the urban areas. And they leave the places where they grow up, where their heritages, and abandon everything to come and live in slums and shacks in the city, and they can't go back. And this is heartbreaking. So I'm not talking about a renaissance, but if we can have a place where we can go, like some people go on Fridays to go and remind themselves who they are, on Wednesdays to go. I think the Indians sometimes have like a whole month of Diwali, where they're doing their Diwali. And we like to make fun of how they speak, but they have themselves. They have their thing. And I think that for me, that is my biggest dream, to like, for us to be able to return the visibility of heritage into our lives without forcing people to be whatever they are afraid of, you know, that rural thing. But that rural thing is us, it's our very essence. And in conclusion, I just want to thank everybody here, because if I wasn't from South Africa, I wouldn't be who I am. If I came from Japan, I probably would be a great sushi chef. Or if I came from Germany, I probably would be a great beer brewer. But because I came from heritage, I came from a people who respected heritage, I came from a country whose resilience came from heritage. I'm a child of heritage, and everything that has been said about me here, the part that is great is because of the people I come from. And there was no way I could be overseas and have a successful career and not talk about the people that I got it from, and not talk about what they were going through, because I will never be able to repay what I got from the people of South Africa and from Africa. And I asked Oliver Mutuguzi, my dear friend here, to come and talk about it, because he comes from the same background and has such a deep passion for heritage, to an extent that he has actually influenced all the musicians in Zimbabwe. Some were singing rock and roll, some were singing R&B, some were singing zoo and B, and all other kinds of things. And he convinced them to come back home in their heads and sing Shona. And last year on his 62nd birthday, I was his guest of honor at a big dinner given for him. And he had a concert that had like more than 20 artists. And two of us came from South Africa, Judith Supuma and myself, and there was Eric Wainaina, another sister from Kenya. But we all knew his songs. And that whole concert was full of young people, maybe about 10,000 young people. And all of us did duets of Shona songs with Oliver Mutukudzi, and the whole audience was on their feet all night singing along with us. And I was envious because I said, wow, this is something that can definitely happen in South Africa. And it happens at our concerts with my band, because in fact we accompany the audience, not because we're great, but because we're singing their songs that they know, and they sing along, let us sing along with them. So, and some people might think that heritage is a disadvantage for a modern life. But India, China, Japan, Malaysia, all those places, they are modern states, but they are based on like heritage, you know, and like they show their culture. Their culture is their mirror, and we have to get our mirror back. We have to get our mirror back from the cities, from the churches. We have to get our mirror back. It doesn't mean we have to stop going to those places, but I think that without heritage, and if we don't like bring back heritage into our lives, when they ask our grandchildren who they are a few decades from now, they're going to say, they say we used to be Africans very long ago. And we might laugh at it, but it's a sad state of affairs. So this, I agreed to have this annual lecture, you know, and really thank the University of Johannesburg for doing it, because this idea needs a home. It needs a home where we can start to nurture it. And if the University of Johannesburg does the things that Professor Tinyiko tells us it does, then definitely it can be a great catalyst for us to like we got our country back. We fought for freedom, but we got democracy, which we're still trying to decipher. But the one thing that we know is that our heritage is there, and we have to go and grab it. And thanks for coming today, and I hope that you'll all help us to go after this big dream. Thank you very much, everybody.